365 958. That's 1850 365 958. And the lines are open now.
I'm joined in studio this morning by the leader of Ireland's newest political party, Direct Democracy Ireland, and their candidate, the Meath East by-election candidate, Ben Gilroy. Ben, thank you for joining us this morning.
No problem.
Your aim as part of Direct Democracy Ireland is to completely radicalise the current system of government that we have in this country.
Yeah, it mightn't be as big a deal as it may sound. I mean, it's a very smooth transition from representative democracy to direct democracy. Direct democracy is something we had in our first constitution. Unfortunately, it was taken out by the government Fine Gael at the time, and it has led us to where we are today, because if you have direct democracy, it leads to good governance. Because let's take the bailout, which started this disastrous downward spiral that the country's in, and I'm afraid there's no brave enough politicians to tell us it's a very bad decision. And in politics, of course, you normally don't get to say, look, I'm wrong, I'm going to pull a handbrake on that and do a U-turn. Nobody does that in politics, and that's why it's a disastrous decision that we have to keep going after this very bad policy that'll end up bankrupting the country. I mean, we're almost there now. But with direct democracy, if we had it, that bailout would have never happened, because, as I keep saying, the night of the bailout, they would have basically told the banks in Europe that we have direct democracy in this country. The people will call a referendum and they will vote it down. So you had better come up with a better plan. And of course, when you don't have direct democracy, it leads to the mess we're in today. And that's it.
And so the proportional representation system that we have, that we vote for people to represent our views, in your view, doesn't work?
No, that works. The direct democracy part of it is where the people had the right to call referendum. Most people today are still under the impression that if you get 75,000 signatures, you can call a referendum. I mean, most people think that. But you can't. That's removed from the Constitution while you weren't looking. And if you could have done that, we could have basically... Well, let me put it this way. After the bailout, because I have young children and I could see what was coming down the tracks, we tried to bring the government to court, as did David Hall. And we knew very quickly that they were going to tell us we didn't have what's called locus standi in the courts. So when you don't have locus standi, you basically can't bring the government to court on that issue. So we tried to do then a class action, but guess what? You're not allowed a class action in Ireland. So then we thought, great, let's do 75,000 signatures and call a referendum. Well, guess what? They took that out too. So basically, we don't have a democracy in this country. What we have is a vote. Every 5 years, we have a vote. So you have a guy coming, he can promise you the sun, moon and stars, you put an X in a box, and then they just do a complete U-turn. And you can do nothing about it till the next 5 years. And then, of course, the next 5 years, Tweedledum goes out, Tweedledum comes in, they'll promise you sun, moon and stars, and guess what? They'll do a complete U-turn. That's not democracy or anywhere close to it. But now it has gone so far that you have now the banking corporations in Europe dictating law for this country. I mean, if you take what's known as the Judge Dunn ruling, this is some protection that family homeowners had in law in Ireland. And it was brought in basically to give them some protection because there was a huge asset grab from the banks. But you have now private banks in Europe dictating to a sovereign government in this country and telling them to change the law because, and excuse my terminology, but to change the law so they can screw the people more, the very people that bailed the banks out in the first place. That's not democracy, and it's a system that nobody voted for.
Then a system that you're talking about, that people are empowered to call a referendum, would that be chaotic, though, that you would have everybody...
Of course, yeah, that's a question that's always asked, and it's not, because let's say you want everybody to wear pink shoes. Well, you have to get 75,000 signatures for that, first of all, so good luck with that. So that's not going to happen. But it also leads to good governance. In other words, it sits like a policeman on the government. So I don't believe the bailout would have ever happened. I don't believe a referendum would have even been needed on that being such a big issue. Because, as I say, on the night of the bailout, if you and I were doing the bailout in the room and we were deciding, oh yeah, that's terrific, he's all gambled on the stock exchange, oh, that's no bother, I'll put that debt onto the Irish people. One of us in the room was going to say, listen, they're going to call a referendum. Why look idiotic? Why waste our time? That's going to be voted down. So you wouldn't have a referendum every day on anything. I mean, Switzerland have it. Switzerland have direct democracy for 800 years. It works terrific. But of course, what it does is it takes the power away from the power-hungry bureaucrats of Europe, and they don't like it. But if you look at Switzerland, Switzerland has the best services in the world. Right, the best service in the world, the highest standard of living in the world, right? They pay for their services 36% of their GDP. We have third-rate, third-world services in this country. There's people dying on hospitals. And, we pay almost 68% of our GDP on that.
Can I ask you then... what separates you? You are, I suppose, opposing the political system, but are you opposing all the policies of the government, or what are your policies aside from the political system itself? Okay, well, obviously you have to get the economy going. I mean, if you don't get the economy going, we're spiralling downwards. Ireland, as I say, is almost bankrupt. I mean, we meet business people from north to south, and I mean that, from north to south. Unfortunately, some on the route we have met have committed suicide. There's 2 suicides a day. So you say, right, how do you fix the problem? The first thing you've got to do is you've got to substantially write down all family home mortgages, okay? Because if you don't, you're going to have no money in circulation. And with no money in circulation, you have business closing every day. And you can see that. Also, you have businessmen coming to us who can't survive. They just can't do it. I mean, you have, say, a shop unit, 2 units either side of you are boarded up, and you still have the same rates. There was a survey done there recently from the Credit Union Association, which would be well respected, that said that at the end of the month, the average person has €50 to spend in their pocket. Now, I'll ask you, what business could you be in where people have €50 a month to spend and try to survive? If you're selling curtains, carpets, televisions, anything, you can't survive. It's almost impossible. The government will say that, these austerity measures, what they're doing at the minute is part of this long-term plan, that we're on a stable footing now, and that, long-term we'll return to the markets and economic stability will return to Ireland. Okay.
Well, they will say that. I mean, that's what they have to say. They can say nothing else. Only that. That's the only way they can sell it to you. It's like basically, Fianna Fáil have basically put the Titanic up on the iceberg, and Fianna Gael then are selling the lifeboats quicker than we can say anything, So it's kick the can down the road, and this sort of Irish way of doing things. Nobody wants to grab the thistle and say exactly what it is. That's why child abuse was in the church, for 20 years longer than it should have been, because nobody wanted to grab the thistle. So what they're doing now is, they started off with good bank, bad bank with Anglo. Do you remember that? Good bank, bad bank. So we dump all the stuff into into NAMA, and we left IRBC as the good bank. So now it's off the books. Now, if people actually knew the truth, we're well worse than Greece when you put them figures back on the books, but it was to massage the figures. Then you have good bank, which was so toxic it's gone worse than bad bank, and it's now in liquidation. That and other debts now passed on to our children. So this is what I mean about kicking the cans down the road. My child is 8 years old. He already owes €53,000 now, I believe. He'll thank us for that in the long term. Look, this is what I'm talking about when you're on failed policies. You can only come with something. You sweep dirt under that carpet, you throw it up here, you hide it in a press, but the dirt is still in the house. And unless you grab the thistle, and the thistle is paying back debts that Ireland had no moral or legal obligation to pay. We're a small country, slightly bigger than Manchester in population. We cannot be paying for the debts of the likes of Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and all these huge companies that could buy Ireland 10 times over with the loose change they have. And we cannot be propping up 64 million people in Germany either. We can't do it. And the sooner everybody realises that, we will be broke and homeless. The lot of us. None of us are more than a phone call or fax away from unemployment.
You were prompted into, I suppose, political activity because of your own situation.
Yeah, well, I remember reading once that if you don't get involved in politics, you'll be ruled by your inferiors, and I'd never seen such a truer statement. And I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but when I met TDs first, my first shock was that how little, sense of reality they have, and they never let truth get in the way of a good story. And I just found it all so alarming that they had no concept of actually what's going on the street. They often say, what I'm hearing on the street is this, and I don't know what street they're on. I don't know what planet they're living in. the point is, it's failed policies. But because Fine Gael supported Fianna Fáil when they done it, they can't retract. No one is brave enough. We have no leaders anymore, and that's why they're now being led by just bureaucrats of Europe that nobody voted for. So we're now in a Europe that nobody voted for, and we're spiralling downwards fast.
You would change, if you were in government, you would change the party whip system?
Absolutely, yes. You have to change the party whip system, because if you take the other candidates that are running from the other parties, OK, they have no say. They will not have no say. They will not be able to affect change. They will not be able to do anything, because with a party system, what you have is, let's say Fine Gael have, 100 TDs, whatever it is, OK? And they sit around the cabinet table. The cabinet table is made of maybe 12, and within that cabinet you have 3 that will really influence, OK? But who's influencing the 3? That's where the danger comes. Who is influencing them 3? They'll be influenced by somebody in Europe, but whom? Nobody asks these questions. Michael Noonan being influenced by people in the Bilderberg group. And this is the huge problem in this country. That is a very dangerous fascist route you go down. That is not democracy and doesn't look anything like democracy. And it's very, very dangerous for our country.
What is it like when you're, I suppose, rowing your own canoe in a way? You're going up against 3, 4 major political parties in the country, and then possibly some smaller candidates. You're talking about big financial machines behind them.
Well, of course there's big financial machines behind them. Sure, they've been run by the banks in Europe, and they're basically the puppets of the banks in Europe. So that is a problem. Of course it is. But, the truth is the truth, no matter what way you like it. And, if people don't want to hear the truth, or they don't want change, then vote for the other ones. It won't really bother me that much. But if people want change, you're not going to do it by hitting like on a Facebook page. You're going to have to actually come out and vote. So I'm appealing to the people who never voted. And I was one of them for 20 years because I seen the corruption in the system. So if you want change, now is the time, and you have to vote. So we're appealing to the people who never voted to come out, and the people who realise that the government are making huge mistakes, come out and vote for us as well.
In terms of local issues in Meath East as a constituency, and I've asked all the candidates this, if you could choose 2 main issues that you think affect people in Meath East, what would they be?
OK, well, obviously employment and mortgages, and probably the taxes they're bringing on. I know that's 3, but I'm always kind of sneaky. I'm getting used to this political stuff. But the mortgages is a huge issue. I mean, there's people, there's marriage breakups, there's suicides. There's 2 suicides a day. That means before the election now, I don't know how many days there's left, 14, maybe 20, but roughly 30 people are going to commit suicide. Yeah. So, you're roughly looking at 28 people going to commit suicide. That's a huge problem in this country. That's like an airplane coming down every 6 months. If that was happening, we'd be all up in arms. But because we don't see it, it doesn't bother us. That's the Irish psyche. That's why we kick stuff down the road. It's the Irish psyche. So the mortgages, that's a huge difficulty. And unless we address that and just basically cut a huge substantial lump off the mortgages, the economy will never recover, because people don't have the money. And then if you don't have the money, it's a knock-on effect. Businesses can't survive without money. So it's a vicious circle. We're spiralling downwards, and somebody needs to grab the thistle. And I'm not talking about debt forgiveness. This is the word the banks use against us, all these trick words. Forgiveness. Forgiveness for what? These people have done nothing. They have bailed the banks out. They broke serious liquidity laws in this country, and half of them should be in jail. Yet when it comes to the mortgage write-down, we've to be forgiven. That's ridiculous. And then you're talking about taxing the homes, taxing water. I mean, if they call it the tax exactly what they are, just say another slush fund for bondholders. That's what these taxes are. Don't call it bedroom tax or household tax or water tax or sewerage tax. These are all just slush funds for bondholders to pay them even more. And once they address all them, that's it.
We have to leave it there. Our time is up. Ben Gilroy from Direct Democracy Ireland, the newest political party contesting the Meath East by-election. And Ben will be joining us and all the other by-election candidates at a round-table debate here in studio in LMFM this Friday. Ben, thank you very much for joining us.
Can I just say, just before you go, we're doing a talk Wednesday in the Headford Arms, 8 p.m.
8 p.m. Oh, you can do that. Ben Gilroy, thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye now.
Michael Reid on LMFM is heard live from 9 a.m. weekdays, and this